Today we would be talking about Shelley as a poet and his poetry. Earlier we had talked about Ode to the West Wind and various critical approaches which are there on Ode to the West Wind. Now, today I have tried to pick some of the critics and what they say about Shelley and his poetry in general. Shelley, as you know by now, that he's a romantic poet and he stands at par with Wordsworth, Keats, Coleridge, and all these poets have romantic trends in their poetry. But Shelley is different. Shelley's approach is different, and the way Shelley approaches nature and the way Shelley writes his language is a bit different from Wordsworth, Keats, and Coleridge. They speak of simple language, all of them, but at the same point of time, Shelley's images and Shelley's language is quite abstract, and it becomes at point of time it becomes difficult to understand the meaning of his poetry, especially for students who have started reading English literature. They find sometimes Shelley quite difficult, especially his ode to the West Wind. And that is why I have tried to collect various critical approaches which I could collect for you about Shelley. And now to begin with, now this is to begin with, we can, as I've already said in this lecture of mine, I would be talking about Shelley as a poet in general and his poetry, because I have earlier already talked about Ode to the West Wind and various critical approaches which are there for Ode to the West Wind. Now, in this lecture, I would be talking about what various critics have to say about Shelley. Now, to begin with, we can start with W. H. Hudson, who has written a lot about Shelley and has divided his poem into two classes, his poetry into two classes: personal and humanitarian. Personal, there in each one of his poems, there is so much of personal aspect that we cannot leave that aspect unnoticed. When we talk of the famous stanza of Ode to the West Wind, "Oh, lift me as a wave, as a cloud, fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed." It is very much personal. In the same way, when he talks of Skylark, when he talks of Prometheus Unbound, there are so many personal aspects. We cannot minus Shelley as a person from these poems, because he's everywhere. He has his philosophy, he has his approach, he has a unique approach towards nature, and he has a set of mind. He craves for utopian world, and that craving or that personal interest or that personal philosophy cannot be deleted from the general things which he deals about the world at that time, or the society at that time, French Revolution at time, or his influences of the way he's got influenced by various political thinkers of that time. Those things could be taken as generally, those things could be taken as personally. And when we talk of his humanitarian approach, then he wanted equality, he wanted an egalitarian society, he wanted a classless society, he wanted that society should not be divided into various tribes, and the various barriers of nations which divided one nation from the other, which made them selfish, which enslaved many nations, and which enslaved many countries of Europe at that same point of time. He talks of a whole human society. He has a dream where everybody is living in one society, and as he wants a general exemption from all fear. In the same way, he wants a personal freedom also. He wants freedom of thought, he wants liberty for everyone, he wants every individual to live with respect and with freedom. So his personal feelings, or the way he wants things for himself, he wants the same things for the world at large. So there is a complete blend of thought, what he feels in his in his inward mind, or what he feels externally for everyone. Then we talk of Matthew Arnold, who has this famous quote when he calls Shelley a beautiful and ineffectual angel, beating in the void his luminous wings in vain. Now his wings are bright, luminous, and but he's beating them in vain. He's beating them meaninglessly. So his interpretation of Matthew Arnold has a two-way approach. One approach is the approach that he's a shining angel. He's an angel, and he's a shining bright angel, and at the same point of time, his talk or his poetry is all in void and vain. So there are two types of approaches which Arnold has taken, and these approaches are, somewhere he is praising Shelley, and somewhere somewhere he is remarking that most of his talks have become void or vain. And then we talk of T.S. Eliot and F.R. Lewis, and they talk of various complexities or various subtleties of the language which Shelley has adopted, but at the same point of time they find Shelley vague. They complain that he lack in concreteness. His ideas are not concrete, his language is not concrete, his imagery is not concrete, but that is Shelley's style. And we cannot blame Shelley for that, because somewhere, even if he was talking of abstract thing, he knew that nature has a life, nature has a spirit, and nature has a divine power. And then we talk of A. Clutton Brook. He pointed out that Shelley was misunderstood by many because he was violently unorthodox. His secularity was confused. He was scientific, but at the same point of time, he considered there is a spirit in nature. His idea of nature was real and awful as the idea of God was to Milton. Milton was somewhere quite fearful or awe-stricken by the presence of God. In the same way, Shelley in Ode to the West Wind, when he talks of the spirit of the West Wind, he calls it untamed, and he says, "Oh here, oh here." He is all at all point of time. He's somewhere asking West Wind to stop for him, or is praying to West Wind as a god. Then his Christian ethics, his Platonic views, admiration for the ancient Greeks, pantheism, and growing disinterest from the worldly affairs, but not understood properly in totality. And that is why, since all these ideas were different from each other, and most of the time they were contradictory from each other, people failed to blend these ideas together. And if they could have been blended, Shelley could have been understood in a better way. Then there are modern critics who criticize him for his greater display of emotions. He sweeps readers into hasty emotional commitments. There is lack of reality. He becomes intangible, inaudible, and invisible in the same way as the wind is. And the abstract representation become very much abstract, very much far-sighted. And then he's blending the ugly, the beautiful, the painful, the disgusting, the horrible. They all put together. But this is how he felt, and this is how his poem is. His poem is a representation of all these different ideas. Then we have Kazemian on Shelley. He says he has created wondrous myths, cosmic schemes, intellectual beauty, spirit of delight, harmony, and amorous and sensual into serene. And his psychological melodies, or his traits of Elizabethan poetry, his philosophical zeal, his tragedy of pathos, his passion for the heroic, meditative, concentrative art, and the freshness and the wonders of primitive and romantic man. All these are put together, and that is why Shelley is the most romantic of all the romantic poets, and he is. He is unparalleled, and we cannot match Shelley's power, or Shelley's ability, or Shelley's gift of writing poetry or gift of imagination with any other poet of his times. Thank you.